Public Library Commission for January 20th, 2022. The time is 4:30 p.m. I am Margot Schaub and I serve as the Library Commission Affairs Analyst. As an ongoing reminder, due to the COVID-19 health emergency, the Library Commission meeting is being held virtually and members will participate in the meeting remotely, pursuant to orders issued by the mayor and current public health recommendations, while allowing the public to observe and address the commission. Commissioners will attend the meeting through video conference and participate to the same extent as if they were physically present. Public comment will be available for each agenda item. Members of the public can observe the meeting while using the Webex system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling local 1-415-655-0001 and entering the access code for the meeting. Today's meeting access code is 2480-444-4936. Attendees wishing to offer public comment should wait to raise their hand until public comment for that specific item has been called. Attendees raising their hands before public comment is called run the risk of having their hands lowered in the normal conduct of the meeting. To make public comment when connected by phone, please raise your hand by dialing *3 when public comment is called to be added to the queue for the agenda item you intend to comment on. Individuals joining by Webex should click the raise hand button in the lower right hand portion of the participant panel to be added to the queue. Best practices to make public comments are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down your television or radio. Each commenter will be allowed 3 minutes to speak.
What are you doing?
Anyone wishing to make a public comment on an agenda item will remain on mute until their line is opened. Bill Kolb from Media Service Operations will facilitate this meeting and assist in moderating public comment. Mr. Kolb will call upon members of the public by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. I will now commence with roll call. Library Commissioners in attendance are President Wardell Giarduzzi, Vice President Pete Wong, Commissioners Mall, Ono, Wolf, and our newest Library Commissioner, Bolender. We expect Commissioner Lopez shortly.
Thank you all for being here, and hello and welcome to this January 20th, 2022 meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. I'm going to start our meeting by reading our Ramaytush Ohlone land acknowledgement. The San Francisco Public Library Commission acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that the Ramaytush Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and have maintained harmony with nature for millennia. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples for their enduring commitment to Warep, Mother Earth. As the indigenous protectors of this land and in accordance with their tradition, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all the peoples who reside in their territorial and their traditional territory. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. As uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as first peoples of the Ramaytush community. We recognize to respectfully honor Ramaytush peoples, we must embrace and collaborate meaningfully to record indigenous knowledge and how we care for San Francisco and all its people. Thank you, members of the public who are here attending this meeting remotely. If you have not done so, all the materials for this meeting are available for download on the Librarian Commission page of the library's website, which is sfpl.org. We have a total of 7 agenda items today. As a reminder, attendees wishing to offer public comment should wait to raise their hand until public comment is called for that specific item. Attendees raising their hands too soon run the risk of having their hands lowered in the normal conduct of the meeting. So we begin with item number 1.
President Wardell, Giarduzzi, this is Margot. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to note 2 things, that Commissioner Lopez has joined us and we are having a technical issue with the slides, but they're getting them up as we speak. But we can continue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome to our Commissioner Lopez for joining us. And those of us that are looking are able to see. Am I the only one hearing the feedback? Or is everyone? Okay. Let's see. We'll just see what happens here. Hey, there was no feedback there. Is that good? Okay, I'm going to commence. I'm going to keep on going. So while we're waiting for the slides to come up, remember that you can find the agenda along with all the supporting materials for this meeting at sfpl.org. As our technology division works on getting these slides up, we'll get caught up shortly there. We begin with item number 1. It's a discussion and possible action on a resolution to adopt findings to allow teleconference meetings under California Government Code Section 54953-E. Recently enacted state legislation allows boards and commissions to hold remote meetings under certain conditions. In order to hold a meeting remotely, policy boards like the Library Commission must adopt findings consistent with the requirements of the state legislation every 30 days. Before us, for consideration, is a draft resolution adopting the findings necessary to hold this meeting remotely. So now we're going to move into our public comment on this commission item number 1. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment should now raise their hand to be added to the queue. If you are using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into the Webex dial-in number at 1-415-655-0001, please press *3 to line up to speak.
Madam President, there's currently 1 caller in the queue.
Thank you. Operations, would you put the caller through, please?
Call in user number 7. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes. At the real meetings, we have a countdown timer that's visible the whole time. May I have a 30-second warning before the time is up? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I take it there's not going to be a 30-second warning?
Just go ahead. You'll have your whole full time.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. I'd like to take note and welcome and wish the best to the newest library commissioner and wish bon voyage to the library commissioner who left previously that position, which was John Lee. We haven't really had any discussion. I wish that there were some note made on the agenda and maybe a chance for the commissioner to say what he's interested particularly in doing with the library and so on and so forth, or how he's connected to the mayor who appointed him and what he hopes to accomplish or what she hopes to accomplish through him. this item has had very little discussion at any point. Basically, just well, let's just say very brief, very little discussion, if any. Resolved, under the resolved clause, it says, at this meeting, the San Francisco Library Commission has considered the circumstances of the state of emergency. Well, pretty much we have branches open for in-person visits. We have the main library open. And it seems to me that there needs to be some discussion about what is it that prevents the usual kind of meeting from going forward, and what, if any, standards the library wants to consider with respect to a reopening. Item 2 says, as described above, state and city officials continue to recommend measures to promote physical distancing and other social distancing measures in some settings. Well, presumably we have taken care of that at the locations. Why can't we have that in a location or even a correct for an in-person meeting? And when will there be a consideration of what the safe time would be? And number 3, as described above and so on and so forth, there's a determination that conducting meetings of this body in person would present imminent risks to the safety of attendees. And there's a state of emergency continuing to directly impact the ability of members to meet safety in person. Of course, we want things to be safe and healthy, but under what circumstances will the library be going back to, and is there going to be any discussion about when the library is going to consider it safe or make it safe to have in-person meetings once again? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any other callers in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no additional callers in the queue. I will pause for a moment to allow any additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose.
Thank you. Operations, are there any callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time.
Okay, hearing that there are no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed on this item. So, commissioners, what we have before us is an opportunity to adopt a resolution that requires under Assembly Bill 361 that will allow the commission to continue to hold meetings remotely according to the modified Brown Act. Teleconference set forth in AB 361. Would someone like to make a motion to adopt?
Hi, this is Commissioner Ono. I make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Ono made the motion. Is there a second?
I'd like to second.
Let the record show that Commissioner or Vice President Huang made a motion to second. So this is what I will do. I will now take roll call for vote. And what we'll do is that you'll listen for your name, and those of the remaining commissioners, I will call you and you will say aye for yes or no. Commissioner Lopez?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander?
Aye.
Commissioner Mall? Commissioner Mall, you unmute yourself.
Wait, I'm trying.
You did it.
I
Say
did? Okay. Okay.
aye.
Aye.
Okay, and let the record show Commissioner Wardell as aye as well. So the resolution passes. Thank you all, commissioners, for participating in that, so we can continue our work this evening. Now we'll move on to item number 2. And now we have also a deck. Our slide deck is up. So those of you that are viewing remotely and have a computer in front of you, you can see that we have now the slide deck that is there. We're moving on to item number 2, which is the election of commission officers. Our next item is both a discussion and action to nominate and elect library commission officers. the positions for president and vice president for the 2022 calendar year. Before we move into our commission discussion, we will first take public comment. So also again, reminder, members of the public who wish to speak should now either raise your hand in Webex or press *3 to be added to the queue. For those already on hold in the queue, please continue to wait until it is your turn to speak, because public comment continues to be open. Operations, are there any callers in the queue?
Madam President, there is one commenter in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put the commenter through, please?
Caller 7, your 3 minutes begins now.
I'm not clear. Is that me?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm number 7 or what.
Yes, that's you. You go ahead and begin. Your time starts now.
All right. I thought that normally you would at least have a motion for people to speak to, because presumably there will be maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 nominees rather than the whole crew. So let me say that I hope that you will, what I expect to do is re-elect the president, and I think you should have for vice president Commissioner Mall. I have a very considerable difficulty if you should be nominating the current vice president. I think that he's very new. I think that he's taken very little active role in the Library Commission's doings and discussions. And I also think that he doesn't have a good sense of fairness and what the law requires. And in particular, there was an incident when Library Users Association sent a letter to the commissioners trying to assist in letting you know when and whether we would be participating in public comment. There had been some difficulty which ultimately led to a finding by the Sunshine Task Force that you had not given a fair and reasonable opportunity for public comment. The vice president, I'm not sure he was at the time, then on adjournment, after we had made public comment on adjournment, took up the letter we had sent and now started commenting on that letter. That completely cut out anybody from making any comments about that comment or consideration. That was completely unfair. And in fact, it was taking up a brand new topic that had nothing to do directly with adjournment. Certainly was legitimate library business, and if that's something that was to be taken up, it should have been agendized. So I think that, I hope that that will be the lineup. I also think that the other commissioners are also qualified to be vice president or, for that matter, president. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any other callers in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no additional commenters. I will pause to allow for any additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose.
Thank you. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue now?
Madam President, there are still no additional commenters in the queue.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment on this item is now closed. So in a moment, I will call for nominations for the election of our 2022 officers. These nominations will be for Commission President and Vice President. Commissioners, please be advised that procedurally, no second is required for the nominations for election of officers. For the president, a simple majority will elect our president and as well the vice president. Please note that each commissioner will have the opportunity to vote, even on a nomination in which they may be the nominee. Okay, so first we will call for nominations for president. Are there any commissioners who would like to make a nomination?
Hi, this is Commissioner Ono. My hand-raising capability seems to have been disarmed, so I would like to make a motion to nominate Connie Wolf as Commission President for 2022.
Thank you, Commissioner Ono. And you know that hand-raising function may not be working it's not working on mine either. So commissioners, just be looking out for each other and help each other, because I don't see everyone all at the same time. Is there a nomination, further nominations for president? So hearing that there is no further nominations for president, we're going to go ahead and just do our, just kind of do a roll call. And when I call your name, say aye or no. Vice President Huang
I'm sorry, just to be clear for the record, what are we voting on right now?
for president.
For Commissioner Wolf specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes. So hearing that there's no other nominations or nominees, I just want to make sure that I go through the record so that we can go through and just call, ensure that we do an aye or nay.
I'm an aye.
Okay, I just called you yes. Aye, thank you. And what we are voting on for Commissioner Wolf, because she is the only nominee at this particular time. There's no other nominees. Okay. Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
And let the record know that Commissioner Wardell says aye as well. So with that, I'd like to congratulate and offer a new president to the San Francisco Public Library, Connie Wolf. And in that, I will cede this role to her to move forward and commence with our vice president.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wardell Garaducci. I just want to, on behalf of, I think, all of our commissioners and the library staff, want to thank you for your extraordinary service as the president over the last 6 years. You have guided us, you have inspired us, you have brought incredible integrity to what we all do, and especially to the library and its role in the city and county of San Francisco. We really are better because of you, and we thank you for your extraordinary service. And the best part about this is that you're still a commissioner, so your voice, your perspectives, your insights will still be invaluable, essential, and vital to the future moving forward. So thank you so much for your extraordinary leadership, your guidance, your generosity, and your kindness in ensuring that the library really is a resource for everyone. Thank you. So, and I really appreciate and thank my fellow commissioners. I look forward to serving with you and to continuing the tradition beginning with Teresa Ono, Commissioner Ono, who was the former president and now former President Wardell Garaducci. So it's a big shoes to fill, and I appreciate this opportunity. So now we are going to vote for a simple majority will elect the 2022 vice president. Each commissioner will have the opportunity to vote, even for a nomination in which they will be the nominee. At this time, are there any commissioners who would like to make a motion for vice president?
I will. I would.
Commissioner Mall?
I would like to re-nominate because I did at our last election, renominate Commissioner Wong. He has been, I think, a great asset as a vice president, and I know that he will continue to be a good vice president with President Connie Wolf. Congratulations. And I have watched him grow and take command of library business in the past couple of years. I don't remember how long it's been, but I would like to renominate him, and I join Commissioner Wolf in thanking our former president for her sterling 6 years of service. And I'm so glad that you are staying on the commission and will have the luxury of your experience and wisdom. So my nomination is for Commissioner Wong.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall, for nominating Commissioner Huang. Do we have any other nominations at this point? Seeing that there are no other nominations, the nominations for Vice President are now closed. We will now commence with voting for Commission Vice President. I will call on each of you and you will either say yay or no. I will begin with Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Wardell Garaducci.
Aye.
And Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Congratulations, Vice President Wong. You have been reelected.
A rule of order, Commissioner Wolf, you need to also vote.
And thank you. I'm learning. And I vote yay. So it is unanimous. And I'm delighted to welcome the Vice President again, Commissioner Huang.
Could I just make a few comments?
Certainly.
Thank you so much for everyone's continued support. I'm really excited to continue serving this role. We have so much great work ahead, and I'm excited to partner with now President Wolf in doing that. Mary, you have been the model president for us, and you know, in I think half the commission's sort of time on the commission, our idea of the president is you, and you have laid the groundwork for us to continue growing kind of what the library is and what the commission is in supporting the library, and you'll always be our home base, and we you know, are obviously looking forward to continuing working with you. And honestly, I'm just so blessed to be surrounded by so much expertise and leadership, and looking forward to learning and growing and continuing to sort of absorb what you know, kind of being surrounded by so many wonderful folks. So again, thank you very much, and I'll be working hard to make you proud.
Thank you so much, Vice President. So now we're going to move forward to item number 3 on the agenda, general public comment. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands to be added to the queue. If you're using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. For those of you who want to dial in, please dial 1-415-655-0001 and press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any hands raised in the queue?
Madam President, there are currently 2 commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Please begin allowing public comment.
Caller 7, your 3 minutes begins now.
Jay?
Well, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users. Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and PO Box 170544-0544. There is quite a bit to talk about with respect to the performance of the library and what it's doing and whether it is meeting its lovely slogan that begins with free and equal access. So the first thing I want to say is that a year ago we were very much troubled by the fact that for what others call Black History Month and what you call I'm not sure even more than a month, I believe, there has not appeared to be any progress with respect to what we asked for, which is to make publicity available and clearly available everywhere that you provide it, and preferably in more than just online venues like your website, so that people understand what the programs offered are that are provided virtually, and most important, the fact that they can access those programs by telephone. It's my understanding the library has now obtained an 800 number so that your Zoom programs can be accessed for free. That was not the case. A year ago, you had only a toll call, which could cost as much as 60 cents a minute from a landline in San Francisco. I think it's stunning and wrong that this capability, which is sitting there unused by and large, should not even be something that you make aware for the public who doesn't have access or easy access or doesn't want to use a computer for privacy reasons or other reasons, to allow them to know that there's a way to get participation with those programs. And as I have quoted to you many times from the mayor's and city's digital equity strategic plan, those most badly affected are minorities, poorer people, older people, people with language difficulties, and so on. I'm also concerned with some serious diminishments of library services, closure earlier at all the branches that are open in the evening than they used to be, books that are not available promptly, magazines that are not current in many of the locations, publicity with respect to what's going on at the library only provided by email or almost only, and not by mail in paper for those who have requested that kind of notification, and so on. I think free and equal access is important to implement. Thank you.
I'm not sure. Connie, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comment. Operations, is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, there are additional commenters in the queue.
You may start the next commenter. Thank you.
Daniel, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. My name is Daniel Kim, and I am an administrator at Rise University Prep, a school in the Baby Hunters Point. And I just wanted to say congratulations on the impressive list of Black History Month events that promote healing and well-being as we continue to fight this pandemic. I am especially happy to see the announcement for the new Black Excellence, Black Inventors bookmarks created by Dr. Carolyn Ransom Scott. She's a good friend of our school, and we really appreciate her work. Thank you for distributing them at all public libraries. I support your efforts to highlight the innovation and inventions of Black African-American people. It is necessary to counter many years of racism, and it's an opportunity to promote fairness and justice to correct this record, to tell the truth and promote learning about contributions of Black African-Americans to the culture and economy of our country. The Black Excellence, Black Inventors bookmark triggers a spark of interest and shows us that all people have the potential to create great things. It is an inspiration to our students who are predominantly African-American. The library too is a place that sparks learning, dreams, ingenuity, and future inventors in our city. I urge you to continue to reach out to communities that have been neglected in the past in order to support the inventors of the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful comments. Is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter in the queue.
You may proceed to have the commenter unmuted.
Marie, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good afternoon, good evening, and congratulations to Commissioner Wolf and Commissioner Wong. It's very exciting. Congratulations. And thank you to Commissioner Wardell for all Giarrucci for all your years of service. I am sorry, I introduced myself. I am Marisa Pella, the Executive Director of Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. We're happy to get into 2022 with everything that it's bringing and seeing that all of the programming it continue to come back. Things like more than a month. We're always so happy to be able to fund that and all the artists and people involved in it. And we look forward to getting the next annual request for support, which we'll get in a few weeks. We're also just I've been announced in the press release, but we're so excited about the Mellon Grant, the Mellon Grant about services to incarcerated people, and once again seeing San Francisco set the model in such a critical issue across the country with the ALA. It's just very exciting. And it was interesting to me. I had a moment of just recognizing how powerful this library was, because I now sit as a board member on the American Library Association United for Libraries National Board. I'm delighted to be there with Luis Herrera and Deborah Doyle. But it's almost tragic, because I listen from our perspective, and there's a very, very, very hard moment that libraries are going through with the rest of the country with regard to intellectual freedom and people resisting and complaining about books and trying to take books out of the library. What you're seeing in school boards and in city halls around the country is happening in libraries too. We are very lucky here, but we're not insulated from this issue. And the American Library Association will be working on this issue. I'll try to bring more information forward on just how serious it is when librarians are being told to take books off the shelf and collections out of libraries, but this is happening nationwide. And I will just try to be an information source for you and get that word out. But we are very lucky where we live, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and congratulations on the new appointment to the board. Operations, is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time. I'll pause for a moment to allow any additional commenters to join if they so choose. Madam President, no additional commenters have joined the queue.
Thank you. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed on this discussion item. We are now going to move to item number 4 on the agenda. Item number 4 on the agenda is fiscal year 23-24 budget priorities. This is for general discussion, and I will now turn it over to the city librarian.
Thank you, President Wolf, and congratulations on your election as president. And thank you, Mary, for all your wonderful years of service. And congratulations, Vice President Wong, on your re-election. This budget presentation will be presented by Maureen Singleton, our Chief Operating Officer, who is also serving in a dual capacity at this moment as our acting CFO. Maureen?
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, commissioners, as well as members of our public. Tonight's budget discussion will provide an update on the budget investment proposals that were first discussed with the commission and the public at our December commission meeting. Next slide, please. One more slide down. Perfect. This is our standard budget calendar that we present to the commission and the public each budget cycle. As you can see, there are 3 main categories of our budget calendar: budget development, budget negotiations, and budget finalization. Currently, we are in the budget development phase and will be for the rest of January as well as into February. And just as a point of next order, once the commission approves the budget in February, it gets submitted to the controller's office and the mayor's office for processing. And then we move into the negotiation phases with the mayor and then eventually the Board of Supervisors, particularly with their Budget and Appropriations Committee and working with the board's Budget and Legislative Analyst Office. And after the committee has reviewed and adjusted any budgets in that phase, it forwards on to the full budget to the full Board of Supervisors for consideration and approval. And then the mayor signs the budget and funding is available. Next slide, please. So at last month's presentation, our former CFO, Heather Green, provided verbally some budget background information for the public and for the commission. This information was provided to us by the mayor and the controller's office the day before the commission meeting, and so this information was not available to be in print format in time for explanatory documents. Knowing that, I always like to represent it in January in print so that you can see the information that was shared verbally. Over the next 2 years, the city is projecting an approximately $108 million surplus. As you can see in this slide, the majority, or nearly $82 million of that projected shortfall, is going to come in the second year of this 2-year budget cycle. The revenue and cost savings are both key drivers in the projected surplus for the city. In particular, you're seeing some overall revenue growth, even though some of the local and business taxes have not quite recovered to their pre-COVID levels. But you are also seeing significant savings in retirement costs over the next several years due to strong returns of this savings or the retirement investment program. The projected surplus also takes into consideration all of the open labor contracts, which is everything except for police and fire, and assumes a consumer price or CPI index increase during this 2-year period. The mayor's general budget instructions to departments were to prioritize restoring the city's vibrancy, focusing in on recovery, and thinking and investing in accountability as well as equity. In the first time in my recollection, the mayor's office has asked the general fund departments to not provide budget reductions. Typically, they ask the general fund departments to provide budget reductions. What they did say, though, is while you may not have to make reductions to your budget, please do not submit budgets that grow your general fund requests from the mayor's office and the Board of Supervisors. As typical during the mayor's budget instructions, they always suggest or always inform the self-supporting departments that you must balance within your own available revenue resources. The library is considered a self-supporting department, and therefore we balance within our available annual and fund balance revenues. Next slide, please. Some additional budget background for you is with respect to the library's specific revenue sources. The mainstay of our revenue is the Library Preservation Fund. In fact, it typically makes up 92% of our overall revenue. What you see here over the next 2 years, based on the December projections from the Controller's Office, we are anticipating $173.1 million of Library Preservation Fund monies in fiscal 23. This is approximately $1.6 million more than what was assumed would be the revenue as part of the fiscal 23 budget that was adopted last cycle. Just as a quick reminder, each budget cycle covers 2 fiscal years, and on an annual basis, we present a 2-year budget. So last year, we presented a budget for fiscal 22 and 23. This cycle examines 23 and 24. So we will have an opportunity every cycle to revisit the second year of any budget proposed. In this cycle, fiscal 24 is estimated to have an LPF revenue of $184.4 million. In addition, another significant source of funding that we can tap into for any budget expenditures we propose is our LPF fund balance. This constitutes essentially, it's like a savings account. So where money is unspent from prior years of property tax allocations in the LPF accumulate there that we can spend on our budget as we deem appropriate. Typically, the library uses this source to help fund one-time investments in capital and equipment. It's important to note that the controller's estimates are done typically in December and in spring, so we do expect revised figures on our annual LPF funds in probably April of this year. So by the time we come back after this budget development phase and give you an update, you should anticipate seeing some different revenue figures. Next slide, please. On this slide, you see our standard strategic budget priorities. Our budget priorities are considered our guideposts by which we continue to invest in the items in our base budget and propose investments through our budget proposal or incremental changes to our budget. Each year, as our chiefs of the various divisions build their budgets, there are certain themes that rise to the top in the proposals that they present for consideration, both at the management team level and then eventually to the commission. Some of the themes that rose up to the top this cycle include advancing racial equity through collections, digital access, capital and facilities investments, right-sizing our operations, which really means taking a look at items that need inflation adjustments or truing up to whatever the current cost estimates are for particular activities. Still on the horizon for us in consideration that you'll see in February will be potential investments for the library as we partner with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families on the Children and Families Recovery Plan. Next slide, please. So typically each January, we provide the public and the commission with a little bit extra information about our collections budget. As you can see here, the key focus for fiscal 23 is about improving BIPOC representation in our circulating collections. We're investing about $200,000 specifically into that effort. We're also looking to continue our Scholars at Home program and add ongoing rather than one-time funding for Summer Together and BIPOC Everybody Reads. That would shift that program from an $800,000 budget to $1.3 million. We also can always take a look at what the demand is, and the demand that's been increasing is in the area of e-collections. So our fiscal 23 budget focuses in on increasing that budget by about 5%. Another point of information is that our fiscal 23 budget assumes approximately $850,000 of one-time funds to prepare our mission library for reopening. So that's a one-time investment that we're only going to see in fiscal 23. So while it may look like we're making a reduction in our collection budget for fiscal 24, it's really just because we have that one-time infusion for the opening day collection. Next slide, please. So here's just a little bit more about our collections budget, which obviously focuses in our strategic priority of literacy and learning. Our physical collection focus is again to continue to support the main library, branches, and bookmobiles, and our fabulous jail and reentry services collection program. Once again, noting here the mission opening day collection, and then we audit our collections to ensure an increased representation of our BIPOC communities. And once again, expanding the Scholars at Home program to include ongoing funding for that important initiative. Our e-collections budget, just so that you know, popular demand for ebooks and e-media has seen a usage increase of 34% from fiscal 20 to fiscal 21. Next slide, please. This is a physical representation of our collections budget over a 5-year period. You can see that, again, we have that bump in fiscal 23 that's associated with our one-time investment for the opening day collection at Mission. So you shouldn't be surprised by the slight decrease that you see for fiscal 24. And as a reminder, once again, because we are in a rolling 2-year budget, that's something we'll have an opportunity to revisit again next cycle. Next slide, please. So I'm going to review some of the investment proposals that were presented to the Commission and to the public last cycle. These are broken out by those major investment categories that I was discussing earlier. This first key one focuses in on racial equity. So here again, you see the investments in our collections of between $200,000 and $500,000 for those key programs. Those investments are ongoing, and that's why you see them as part of the proposed total investment for 23 and the ongoing budget for fiscal 24. The 3 other investments that are on this slide are one-time investments, and the focus there is on providing facilitation services for the city librarian's office as well as other divisions to gain facilitation services, build trust and innovation, and collaborate. This often gives us some extra added capacity when we don't always have the bandwidth with our existing staff to pursue additional ideas and projects that come our way. The Racial Equity Action Plan allocation is to prepare us for the next phase of our racial equity work. Our racial equity manager will be joining our team this fiscal year, and this would ensure that that person, once they're on board, already has adequate funding to move forward with implementing more of what was developed as part of phase 1, but also what's upcoming in phase 2, where we'll be working on our equity actions for the services provided to our public. Phase 1, you may recall, is focused internally on equity issues for our staff. Our open hours assessment allocation is part of our effort that we do every 5 years to reassess what our open hours should be based on a public engagement process. So this is a one-time investment that comes around approximately every 5 years. Next slide, please. Our digital access investments focus in on assistive technology as well as connectivity in the first 2 investments you see there. A combined $200,000 is proposed as an investment for assistive technology for our Talking Books and Braille Center here at the main library. $100,000 of that is a one-time investment in equipment refreshment, as well as $100,000 for ongoing support from a vendor to continue to provide the technical support needed for hardware, software, and training for our staff. There's approximately $100,000 allocated to 5G connectivity for our bookmobiles, so they can be mobile hotspots and better serve our staff and our public in our 4 bookmobiles. For the digital center, we're seeing some one-time and ongoing investments to ensure that we have upgrades for our digital asset management system. We're digitizing collections for a broader access for our public. This also trues up the ongoing budget needs in the long term. Once again, you see highlighted here our investment in our e-collections. This is also a reminder that it's approximately a 5% increase assumed for fiscal 23. And next cycle, we'll take another look at what the ongoing needs are and present something during that budget cycle. The last two items are focused in on our virtual programming needs. So we want to keep the patrons and the members of the public who have joined us through our virtual programming during the COVID pandemic. The first allocation of $60,000 is to provide kits for our staff, our frontline staff, the cameras, the mics, the laptops, etc., to ensure that they have the capacity and the tools needed to provide hybrid programming, both in person and virtually, for our public. This would then help leverage the capacity of our media services staff so that they can also help provide virtual programming for our public. The other key investment here is for the Zoom licenses and registration software so our public can access the services via sufficient number of licenses as well as easily register for our programming. Next slide, please. So this is a highlight of our capital facilities investments. You'll see largely what's focused here is on renewals of our assets. Last time when we presented the budget, we weren't quite sure what our investment dollar figures would need to be for updating and replacing our cameras and our key card system. But since December, we've been able to solidify the number with our vendor. And you'll see here an investment, a one-time investment, both for our cameras at $320,000 and for our key card system at $355,000. So for our cameras, this is replacing equipment, much of which is about 10 years old, as well as making sure that we are on the latest server and that our systems are consolidated. Right now we have two different systems, one for the main and one for the branches. So this would allow us to be consolidated and more efficient. Our key card system is a way in which our staff access certain areas of the library, and that also has come to the end of its useful life. So this would allow us to upgrade our equipment as well as get on the vendor's current software version and improve the centralized management of our security. With respect to building envelope renewals, that's looking at things like roofs and windows and waterproofing. And so what you see here is a proposed investment of $250,000 that allows us to provide both seed funding to investigate the type of work that needs to be done eventually, but also allows us funding to actually conduct the work and keep our facilities in a state of good repair on an ongoing basis. On our investments in renewals of elevators, as many of you know, we're finishing up the modernization work of our elevators here at the main library. So next up is to take an assessment of what our branch elevators need, and that's going to start with a $100,000 investment to work with an elevator specialist to determine what modernization steps are needed in our branches and the plan to roll that out over time. Our fire life safety system also requires a renewal and an investment in that on an ongoing basis. So you see a $50,000 investment there. That'll help us plan and then allocate funding over time. Renewals of our interiors looks at things such as our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, our building management controls, and our boilers, assessing what it is at the end of our life, or that's at an end of a life cycle, as well as creating plans on what to upgrade, how to modernize, and where we might electrify a building. Our largest investment on in this proposal deck here is $2.5 million for the park branch exterior. This is something that we've been investigating and determining a solution for over the past couple years, and will include not only replacement of the roof at the branch, but also address the water intrusion issues. And then the last thing you see here is the replacement of a facilities truck. In particular, this is for our carpenter truck. Last year we tried to do it, the commission approved it, but the city central shop decided that it wasn't quite time to replace that 18-year-old vehicle. So we're going to give it another try this year and see if we can get that approval through. Next slide, please. So in December, we had indicated that we would come back with some additional information about our major capital projects, which at this juncture includes the renovation of Mission and Chinatown, as well as the new construction project for Ocean View. As many of you know, the cost of our Mission project is now estimated to be $24.5 million. And as of fiscal 22, we have available funding for that of approximately 21.5. So we have a gap or funding need of around $3 million for Mission to be fully funded. For Chinatown, the estimated budget is approximately $29.4 million. And through the last cycle, including what was approved as part of 23, we have approximately 27.7. So the funding gap is 1.7. The risk is cost escalation. I'm sure many of us are quite aware of the cost escalations that happened with Mission, but maybe even personally, we're seeing what's going on or we're seeing what's happening in the news. That same risk is true for Ocean View. The Ocean View is a little bit further away from being ready to be being shovel ready for work. The total budget estimate for Ocean View at this juncture is $47 million. We've got approximately $16.5 million allocated and a funding need of $30.5 million. Next slide, please. At this juncture, investments in these categories for the next 2 years are broken out as follows. For fiscal 23, we're looking at approximately $5.7 million that would be allocated as follows. $3 million for Mission, $1.7 million for Chinatown, and an additional $1 million for Ocean View to keep that project moving forward. In fiscal 24, we're looking at a proposed investment at this juncture of approximately $10 million. This is assuming a 10% cost escalation for Chinatown or $3 million, and then allocating $7 million for Ocean View. I will note that Public Works is currently working with its estimator to get an updated estimate for Chinatown. So when we know that information, we'll share that with the Commission and with the public. With respect to Ocean View, some potential other options for bridging the total gap that's still needed with this investment would be considering citywide funding, and we will continue to do that through the city's capital planning program. Other potential funding options for the library for these projects include state funding. The Building Forward Library Infrastructure Program is anticipating to be able to allocate across the state up to $439 million in one-time funds for library capital projects. At this point, we're anticipating the application process will open up in early 2022. We're monitoring the state's website to see when it opens up. And at this juncture, we anticipate the two projects that would be eligible for this round of funding would be Mission and Chinatown. Any funding that we receive from the state would then free up what we've allocated of library preservation fund monies for Ocean View. So in the end, we could get some more money for LPF if we get state funding for our Mission and Chinatown capital projects. Next slide, please. The last investment category is the right sizing of operations. And as I mentioned before, the key focus here is really understanding what it is the true costs are for providing some of our investments, as well as addressing CPI needs. The first investment you see here is information governance. This is us following in the footsteps of our sister city agencies by investing in a service to help us ensure that we are in compliance with city records retention policies, as well as managing our overall records. You also see some key investments in our IT infrastructure, one of which is switching to a cloud-hosted environment for our patron database, as well as upgrading and replacing our messaging communications capabilities. Specifically, that's replacing our telephone notification and renewal systems for our public. The system that we currently have is becoming quickly outdated, and now's the time to invest in that. And that's the $22,000 investment that you see. Our network switches and servers are on a refresh cycle within our IT division. So it's assumed that they need to be refreshed every 5 years. So every year you're seeing some investment to ensure that we're refreshing our IT equipment over time. The remaining items you see here are really about, once again, truing up our budget to meet our needs on supplies and uniforms and small recurring items. The last adjustment that we're making here is our Poet Laureate allocation. And previously we had allocated $5,000 a year for this, but with our latest Poet Laureate, we determined that the annual allocation should be $35,000, which would make it one of the highest allocations of library jurisdictions around SFPL. So this is a true up of that budget to ensure that we have proper ongoing funding availability. Next slide, please. This slide is just a high-level summary of all the investments. So you can see the total of the proposed investments for 23 is approximately 12.8 million. And for fiscal 24, it's 11.5 million. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, that one investment that's still on the horizon is how the library will participate in the Children and Family Recovery Plan. We've been in conversations with the Department of Children, Youth, and their families, as well as the Mayor's Office, to determine how the library can support this effort over the next 2 fiscal years with our upcoming budget proposal. Just as a little bit of background, the Department of Children, Youth, and their family were tasked with developing a citywide plan to help our children and families recover from the pandemic. They began the community engagement in July of 2021, and the plan development began in September of 2021. As you can see here, there are a couple or a few recovery plan goals, and that's to create a citywide plan over the next 3 to 5 years to help families recover from COVID-19 and to align resources and steer implementation and coordination of advocacy efforts. This is something that we can benefit from no matter what. It's helpful for our public to know all the available resources that we have out there for them to utilize. Also, the goal includes capitalizing on collaborative and barrier busting approaches that we've learned about and utilized during the COVID response. And then lastly, it's about leveraging relationships between children, family, and youth serving organizations across the city. The library's specific partnership opportunities would be partnering with the Department of Children and Youth and their family on existing and prior services, and that could include our investments in the YouthWorks program, as well as our successful Community Hubs program. We will be able to present more details on this investment at our February Commission discussion. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to conclude the overview of our budget investments. But just know that for the remaining week or so of January, we're going to continue to refine our figures as we do all throughout the month of January. We're going to confirm our work orders with the departments that work on our behalf. And then in February, we'll come back with our budget proposal for you to review and approve. We'll also include, as I just mentioned, the proposed investment that the library would do to participate in the Children and Family Recovery Plan. Once all of that is done, we'll submit our budget as required to the controller in the mayor's office by February 21st. Next slide, please. And with that, that concludes the budget presentation. I'll be available to answer any questions. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for your extraordinary presentation, so full of detail, richness, and you were able to kind of simplify the complexity of everything. And so now we will move into our public comment before our commission discussion on this item number 4. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment should now raise their hand to be added to the queue. If you are using the Webex interface, click the Raise Hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into the Webex dial-in number at 1-415-655-0001, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no commenters in the queue. Check that. Someone has just joined the queue.
Thank you. You may begin public comment on this item.
Caller number 7, your 3 minutes begins now.
I guess that's me. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. Thank you very much for this presentation, and I appreciate, as usual, the presenter and her presentations generally. I'm particularly glad there are page headings and, for many of the pages, though not all of them, page numbers, something that I think is a very high-tech thing that the library ought to be able to do very consistently. I would suggest, since some people may be on the phone as I am, it would be helpful for the library in general to make an insistence that page numbers and page headings be referenced for those people who cannot see what you see on your screen. The first thing I say is that there seems to be nothing at all about staffing, and that's a great concern. Staffing presumably is the bulk of your budget, and I don't see anything that's talking about staffing or the breakdown of staffing, what is being staffed, what positions, and so on and so forth. Second, I'm very concerned about books and collections. In this case, books meaning actual books. As I think I've said before, it appears to be a sort of unspoken priority, not just to have e-books as augmentations of printed books, but more and more it's troubling to see that those are the only sources for the materials that are provided in the library. The mayor's, the City and County of San Francisco Digital Equity Strategic Plan for 2019 to 24 specifically had in its appendices demographics information about who has what kind of access. And basically more than 100,000 people in the city, so it said, did not have good access to the internet or computers. And who were the ones of that group that had the most difficulty were minorities, poorer people, older people, and those with not proficient in English. It bothers me a great deal that everybody can access a book, but if you don't have the equipment, you can't even access the electronic material when you're in the library. The library doesn't provide you with Kindles and the like. In many cases, for the reading.
3 minutes.
and access. And I think that that has to be
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate them. Are there any further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, this time there are no additional commenters in the queue. I'll pause for a moment to allow additional commenters to join if they so choose. Madam President, there are still no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you. Hearing that there are no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed. We will now move on to commission discussion on this item number 4, which is about the fiscal year 23-24 budget. This is a discussion item only. In February, we'll have the opportunity to act on this. Will the fellow commissioners, if you have a comment, please raise your hand in the side, or I will, if you can't do that, then please just raise your hand on the screen and I will call on you. Thank you.
Looks like Commissioner Mall has her hand raised.
Thank you. Commissioner Mall. We can't hear you yet.
Okay, now, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, good. Maureen, you do the most amazing job year after year. And I don't know how you keep it all straight and present us with such a precise and organized budget when there are so many moving parts. But I have a few questions. You know, we all have things that are near and dear to us to either applaud or complain about. So I have a couple. The elevators. I understand that you're looking at the elevators in the branches. Does that mean that you don't need any more money for the elevators in the main? That's question number 1. Do you want to answer that first?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do not need any more money for the elevator modernization work at the main library.
So you mean they are all up and running?
They're not done yet. There's still one staff elevator. It should be done, I think, pretty soon, or in early or mid-February is my recollection.
Okay, that's excellent. And the bottom line is you don't need any more money for it because they've all been fixed, correct?
The 7 elevators at the main library.
Have been fixed.
Correct.
Okay, bravo. And the $100,000 for that is just to explore the libraries in the other
in the branches.
In the branches, yeah.
Yes. So it's important to hire a consultant who's an expert in the field. So we did that here at the main library. I believe the vendor we procured before was Siska Hennessy. And so what they do is they take a look at the condition, the type of elevator it is, where it is in its useful life, and then come up with a plan for us that we review with our own team as well as the Public Works colleagues to determine what our plan is to modernize and renew our facilities and how we would do that over time. So we'd have to be thoughtful of obviously accessibility as we do this work.
I understand that. Now, and how does that happen? How are you sensitive to the accessibilities issue if the elevators are out of use? I say this all because many of you remember I had a knee replacement several years ago, and I thought, how could I ever get to the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th floor in the library if the elevators were not in use?
Yeah. And that is something that we would build out as part of our plan. So that's why it's important to take the time to assess the condition of our assets and then what the plan would be to refresh and replace them and how we would do that and how we would handle the access issues. In a lot of ways, it's almost easier at a facility like the main library where you can phase the work. But when you're in the branches and you have but one elevator, there's a different set of planning that you need to do as part of that process. So
I
that's
understand.
what's, yeah, so it's important for us to think through those things, and I'm sure we will be working in consult with the mayor's office on disability as we think through how to actualize the modernization effort.
Well put, Maureen. So I'm assuming that that $100,000 is just a drop in the bucket for what will become a larger project, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Commissioner Mall, if I may jump in here, I'd also like to point out that the major renovation projects at the Mission branch and the Chinatown branch will account for upgrading the mechanical systems, including the elevators at these locations. In the case of Chinatown, there are 2 elevators, and the prospective renovation would consolidate that equipment to one brand new elevator. And this disruption would be minimized through the regular disruption of the branch being closed. So we are trying to plan strategically to have our elevators replaced during these major capital projects as well.
Good. And I understand that you're dealing with, I don't know how many out of the possible 28 that need renovation. Totally. Correct? I mean, these are mostly old buildings that are the branches.
That's correct. I mean, currently we have the 3 major capital projects in flight. And then, as we've discussed this evening, Park Branch has a significant investment. The elevator is not part of that, but we have a mix of facilities dating back to 1909 in
Right.
Park's case, Carnegie Libraries, mid-century modern. So
Right.
we have a whole spectrum of facilities with different ages.
Right. Okay. So that's money that will obviously be in the budget going forward. And since you mentioned the Mission branch, I just want to say for the record how disappointed I am in several of the city's agencies that they could not coordinate their efforts in finding an alternative to the branch and to the branch while it was closed. And I really want to say that if I was a Mission neighborhood resident, I would really be unhappy that my neighborhood library has been closed for so long without another option. So I know that there's been so many false starts, and I understand that. I just want to put my comments, I just want to say my comments publicly.
Understood.
Okay, and I do think that I think that we're so lucky as a city that we're not being asked to reduce our budget. And I only hope that Maureen can do her magic going forward, that there's going to be enough money to do in the future everything that needs doing, because the needs seem to be getting greater and greater.
I will continue to work my magic and work with an amazing crew of folks to help us get the right budget in place each cycle.
Good.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall. I'd like to now call on Vice President Huang for his comments.
Thank you. Maureen, echoing what others have said, fantastic work, and it's always a pleasure to get the budget priorities from you and the team, just because it's a lot of information that you pick out the right highlights for us, which I always appreciate. I only have one question, which is regarding the e-collection. So I think in previous years, I think someone as an outsider looking in might say that the e-collections budget has grown tremendously, and I think if we were to plot out the last 5 to 7 years, They look very up and to the right, which is good for some industries, but bad for budgets if they continue. I'm curious if your team has done any sort of planning or estimations or sizing of where the e-collections budget ends up falling in the long term. So as we sort of exit this period where we've grown that budget to match demand, where we think it'll land as we look towards the next 2 to 3 years. Have you done that sort of exercise before?
I can jump in here, Maureen, if you want. Thank you for the question, Vice President Wong. And the answer is yes. We have done some forecasting previously. I will point out that pre-COVID, our circulation breakdown was approximately 2/3 of our circulation was physical items and 1/3 was digital collections. And that held true for the last full fiscal year pre-COVID, which would have been FY19. During that time period, our research strategy and analytics unit had forecast that digital would overtake physical around FY23, perhaps FY24. And of course, during the global pandemic, COVID just accelerated that disruption to the point where, digital was the predominant circulation while all of our libraries were closed. Now that we are back reopened at about 91% of our pre-COVID hours of operation, we have seen physical circulation recover, and it is roughly 50-50, give or take. So it is projected that the demand for digital collections will continue to grow. I think what we would like to do is get through this current fiscal year, get all of our branches back open to 7-day service, and see how the dust settles, allow us to analyze, let's say, the fourth quarter of this fiscal year when we should have all of our branches back open 7 days a week, and then continue to look at this demand in the coming fiscal year. It's something that we will monitor closely, and our Collections and Technical Services Division and our Research Strategy and Analytics Unit will continue to work collaboratively together to inform future budget investments.
Thank you. I appreciate it. One curious item, I'm using the word curious to honor our former Commissioner John Lee here, channeling him. One thing I would be curious about is sort of the drivers of the increased usage of ebooks. So, for example, certain narratives might be that broader awareness of Libby, Overdrive, et cetera, and our ebooks offering leads to greater usage of library services as a percentage of the population in San Francisco. I'm curious if that's true. I'd be curious, like, where specifically the growth is coming from, but not at all, I don't think, critical to the budgeting discussion, but just so I understand kind of how to think about ebooks and digital services as a whole within the broader library strategy.
Thank you for that question. And we can certainly bring back a specific report and agenda item just focused on collection utilization trends. And our Collections and Technical Services Division Chief, Shelley Cocking, she has presented that information before, so we can certainly look at that again and come back to a subsequent commission meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vice President. I'm now going to turn to our newest commissioner, Commissioner Bolander, for your comments.
Thank you very much for that. Thanks, Maureen, for a wonderful presentation. I've seen lots and lots of these, and that's the one you just did was very clear, concise, and also very compelling. So thanks for that. I have two questions. First one relates to the CPI calculation that I think the city gives you guys for the budget increase. As you mentioned before, You don't have to listen to the news very much to know that we were in some turmoil in terms of the economy. And I'm just curious how that's set and how you're going to be thinking about that given its volatility.
Sure, thanks for that question. So usually the Controller's Office Budget Analysis Division is the one that looks at what CPI assumptions we should be making at the department level. And they factor that into things such as fringe benefits, as well as labor cost assumptions. And then they have recommendations for CPI changes that we should do if we were to change our fees or anything of that sort. And then traditionally, I always like to look at what the Bureau of Labor Statistics is projecting or showing for the San Francisco region as we think through some of our non-personnel items.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Also, the next question relates to the line item about shifting to the cloud-based services. It looks like that's going to continue on for the next couple of years. Is there any sense of how much that shift's going to happen over time? I know to right size the operations, and of course, it's my guess it's done for saving money and being able to upscale and downscale without having like actual physical hardware in the facility. I'm just curious if you see that increasing or if that's for another like discussion about just the technology moving forward.
Yeah, that's a good question. I might need to lean on our Chief of Information Technology, Michael Lang, to help answer that question. But part of the shift over to the cloud also is tied to reliability and recovery if we ever encounter a scenario rather than having on-prem servers. Michael Lang, I'm not sure if you can help shed some additional light, or we can be sure to bring back that information at our February discussion.
Thank you. This is Michael Lang, Chief of IT. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Maureen. You are right. Right now, we're doing the baby steps of going to the cloud. It's going to be mostly backup, resiliency, redundancy, kind of test the waters, then eventually we'll flip it. Currently, we are doing on-prem, and we are actually on-prem because we're very large. We actually tried to go to the cloud or wanted to go to the cloud about 5 years ago. We were just a little bit too daunting, and it was too much of a risk at that time. So this is our first baby steps in going to the cloud for us, being so large. So we're hoping for the best. It is there is cost savings down the road, but probably not initially for the next couple of years.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I actually look forward to seeing more of that, and also the just general strategy on that. Although it is cost savings, obviously, to outsource it to other folk, there is definitely advantages and disadvantages to on-prem, as well as redundancy, especially as a core service. Making sure that obviously things are up and running. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
If I could add, it's also improving performance and service, because being on-prem, it's a single point of failure. If the main has a power outage, the branches have to go manual. But if we go to the cloud, we could design it to have continual operations, even if the main goes down without power. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Bolander. It's clear that you're bringing a wonderful perspective and insight and knowledge to the commission. We're really delighted to have you join us. And thank you, Michael, for helping answer those questions. I'd now like to turn to Commissioner Lopez for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. You were very easy to follow. Budgets are always challenging, and everything that you talked about and explained, I think, it makes it so much easier to understand. I do have a question, and my question is regarding the poet laureate. Can you and I don't know if I did not catch this correctly, but the increase was to for the poet laureate programming, or can you explain that? Because I see a jump on the budget and that section, and I wasn't quite understanding.
Sure.
I can jump in here if you'd like. The Poet Laureate program historically provided a $5,000 stipend for the entire 3-year tenure. We had thought about increasing that to $5,000 a year just to provide more compensation, but in really thinking about the role of San Francisco Poet Laureate and benchmarking other municipalities, we recognized that even $5,000 a year was not commensurate with what other major cities were providing. And we certainly want to honor our local artists and compensate them fairly. So we proposed making this a $35,000 annual stipend. So, a little bit over $100,000 for the full 3-year term. And that would put San Francisco, relatively speaking, at the highest level for municipal poet laureates compensation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any, thank you so much, Commissioner Lopez, for that query. Are there any other comments from the commissioners at this time? We will have another chance to review the budget in our February. Oh,
President Wolf, it looks like Commissioner Wardell Giarduzzi has her hand up.
okay, great. Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Wolf. I knew you couldn't see me because I can only see 4 people at a time myself. I just want to make a comment that the increase of the compensation for the San Francisco Poet Laureate is one of the most dignifying things that we can do in this budget. In addition to the racial equity and the way in which we're leading the nation in many ways, maybe Seattle Public, there's a few other that are doing good work, but I still think that we're at the forefront of that racial equity work. Doing this for, as Michael has already said, as our city librarian already said, it really is not only the right thing to do, but it is the just thing to do. These individuals oftentimes have so much invisible labor. They are called, and maybe sometimes they might get little stipends here and there for the organizations, but they work so much, and they do it out of love for speaking truth to power oftentimes. And so I was just so pleased when I saw that increase. And Maureen and all of folks that's involved with her, thank you so much for acknowledging the role of artists at a time such as this. Actually, they've always been the truth tellers, right? Society and cities and municipalities have always known that. So we have to continue to lead the way to model how do we go about treating our artists. And the Poet Laureate is at the very top of appointments in the city and county of San Francisco as far as being allotted artists in whatever form that is. And so I just want to say thank you so much. And I'm so pleased that we've done that, Maureen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. Any further comments from the commissioners? In case I can't see. Well, I think this brings this agenda item almost to a close. I just want to add that I'm particularly and especially appreciative of the expansion of services and programs as part of the racial equity strategic priority. It's a wonderful way in which we are honoring the staff and their incredible hard work to address these issues and provide them the resources, the staffing, and the priority to make these programs integrated and vital to everything that we do at the library. I also just want to thank again Maureen. And Maureen, you just always make it look so easy, but we know behind you are just teams of staff who are dedicated, making sure their budgets are in on time, really analyzing what's needed, thinking ahead, prioritizing, analyzing, planning. And of course, this budget is just a piece of paper. And what really matters is what happens when it is approved and issued and you actually get to roll up your sleeves and do the work. So we're especially appreciative of this phase of the budget planning and really look forward to when we can review this again in February and move forward. So thank you, everybody. We're now going to move to item number 5 on the agenda, which is the City Librarian's Report. And I'm going to turn that over to the Chief Librarian.
Thank you, President Wolf, and good evening, Commissioners. We have a number of reports this evening, and Commissioner Wolf, your comments to close out the last agenda item, it's a great segue to introducing our first presenter, Shauna Sherman. She is the Program Manager for the library's African American Center. She is also the co-chair of our Racial Equity Committee, and this evening she has a presentation on our annual More Than a Month celebration of Black history and culture at the library. Shauna?
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, commissioners and public. I'm here to talk about our wonderful lineup of events in our More Than a Month celebration, a commemoration focusing this year on health and wellness. Our activities include talks and workshops and many practices that can help Black people and all of us confront and heal from the ways our white supremacist culture insists on devaluing Black lives. Notice in this wonderful original art produced by Tiffany Conway Cornelius, there are books. Notice the ancestors on the wall. Notice the bulls, the plants, all nourishments that represent what we're about this Black History Month. And boy, do we need it. Please take the opportunity to hear Conway Cornelius discuss her process and offer a drawing workshop as part of our suite of programs this January and February. Next slide. When Carter G. Woodson founded what was called Negro History Week in 1926, the week provided a special time to celebrate racial pride. Later expanded to a month, we take this time to recognize our accomplishments and celebrate Black culture. Back then and now, this is no more evident than when we talk about Black invention. This winter, we are proud to partner with the Reverend Dr. Carolyn Ransom Scott and the HRC to offer her Black Inventors bookmarks to the San Francisco community. The bookmarks list Black inventors and inventions and will be available at all SFPL locations starting in February, with an accompanying opening celebration to be held on February 13th. And this is now turned virtual, so the slide is a little off right now, an exhibit that will be at the main library, and public programs documenting Black innovation in the past, present, and future. Next slide, please. This January, our Readers Advisory Groups helps us celebrate yoga with On the Same Page author Jessamine Stanley, who taught us how to do yoga and in her new book, Yoke, tells us why we should. The author, activist, and social advocate will discuss her work, writing, and yoga with Tamika Caston Miller, director and curator of Yogini of Asha Yoga. Join the virtual conversation on February 22nd at 7 p.m. or participate in the book club on February 14th. Next slide, please. Last night, we spoke with Dr. Rebecca Hall about her graphic narrative, Wake, the Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts. In this must-see conversation, Dr. Hall, a legally trained scholar, goes on a journey to study slavery in order to find links to the present. More than look at slavery as a system, her book shows how researching our past, confronting its horrors, and learning about resistance is a kind of healing in itself. It's hard emotional work, which she acknowledges in the book, quoting wisdom from Audre Lorde, who said, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." A recording for this program is available on our YouTube page for a limited time through February 2nd. Please check it out. Next slide, please. And what better way to care for ourselves than to take a break and build a practice of wakefulness and tranquility in the African American Center with disability rights activist and contributor to the Netflix documentary Crip Camp, Dennis Billups. We are honored to host Billups in partnership with the Talking Books and Braille Center every Wednesday in February at noon in the African American Center. Come meditate and chat afterwards. Next slide, please. The Art and History Center's Thursday at Noon film series this month features the Netflix documentary High on the Hog, How African American Cuisine Transformed America. The multi-part program takes viewers on a culinary journey that ventures from Africa to the Deep South and is an example of African American invention and contribution, which showcases the myriad ways African culture infuses our lives. Next slide, please. And we are also super excited here at the library to welcome Quincy Troop, poet of the Deep Song, to celebrate his latest poetry collection, Duende, Poems 1966 through Now, from Seven Stories Press. This honored poet will be in conversation with longtime friends Terry McMillan and Danny Glover and feature cameos from an all-star lineup of Troop's contributives over the last few years. This is a don't miss program on February 10th at 2 p.m. in our virtual library. Next slide, please. And we have more authors to celebrate this more than a month, carrying on a long tradition of Black authorship, Black creativity, and Black invention in America, which started with Phyllis Wheatley and Benjamin Banneker and continues with this panel of crack crime authors Frankie Y. Bailey, Tracy Clark, Delia Pitts, Faye Snowden, and Abby L. Van Diver to discuss their contributions to Midnight Hour, a chilling anthology of crime fiction. They'll be in our virtual library on February 16th. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, we would need to cancel our program on January 22nd, but hope to see author Saeed Shai again at the library. Next slide, please. You'll notice here we have a wealth of more programs dedicated to health, wellness, and community learning, including a double feature of groundbreaking films shown by our LGBTQIA Hormel Center, talks sponsored by our Business Center with the Vegan Hood Chefs and Satori Yoga, who talk about their small business journey and also offer cooking and a yoga demonstration, as well as a panel on the state of Black health, where participants will come away with personal and community health goals for 2022. I'm excited for the journaling workshop centered on healing through the stories of female Orishas from the Yoruba tradition as well. And please join our partners from the National Park Service for a talk on unity between Native American activists and their work with the Black Panthers and Brown Berets. Dates and times for these programs are here and can also be found on our website at sfpl.org. Next slide, please. And it's not just talk. Use your hands in art workshops with local artists Ramaikan O. Arwister and the Museum of the African Diaspora. Please note the in-person January 23rd event has been rescheduled for Sunday, February 20th to help in our fight against Omicron. Practice 2 hands-on art activities with MOAD, pen and food color painting, and no glue collaging. And here are the dates and times for our conversation with feature artist Tiffany Conway Cornelius, who will be in conversation with us on February 8th and offer a workshop on February 10th. Next slide, please. And for our youth programs and for the whole family, in conjunction with our Black Excellence Black Inventors bookmark, Youth Services will be hosting a conversation with Ifu Eko Nosakare Iji Bendian, Marian Muthui, and I'm sorry for my mispronunciation of that name, Marian Muthui, Candace Payne, and Elizabeth Smith, Black women role models who use their creativity and knowledge to be creators and innovators. This panel is moderated by Linda Calhoun, founder of Career Girls, and is specifically for ages 8 through 18, but probably a great conversation for the whole family. And in our center panel, youth librarians Rachel Fage and Jason Hill and librarians from the San Francisco Unified School District team up to talk about Black joy in books and resources at the library. And for a little entertainment, on February 26th, listen as the Grammy-nominated team of the Alphabet Rockers read You Are Not Alone, a debut picture book that empowers kids to love their beautiful selves, celebrate their identities, stand up to hate, and have each other's backs no matter what. Then move your furniture and get down with this local grown-up musical group to continue the celebration with movement. Next slide, please. We hope to see you at any and all of these more than a month events, and please check out other offerings at sfpl.org. Thank you, as always, to the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library for your continued support and funding, and thank you to all who help make this program happen, including all our programmers, graphic designers, our public affairs department, our program partners, and everyone working throughout the San Francisco Public Library to help keep our libraries open for San Francisco.
Thank you so much, Shauna. I appreciate all your leadership and coordination of these amazing programs. Commissioners, I'm pleased to introduce our next presenter this evening. Next slide, please. Our next presenter is Jeannie Austin, Jail and Reentry Services Librarian. They are joined by Rachel Kennan, our JARS Program Manager, with a report on an exciting development related to the jail and reentry services work we're doing in San Francisco. Jeannie?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Commission, for having us today. We wouldn't be able to present this very exciting news if it wasn't for your ongoing support for all of our work in jail and reentry services, and thank you also to the Friends for your support. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit more about the Mellon grant that was mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of the grant. We were approached by Mellon and asked to apply for this grant to the tune of $2 million, where it's a 2-year grant in which we'll engage in a lot of activities, which I'll show you in just a little bit. And we're very fortunate, as mentioned earlier by the Friends, that we are partnering with ALA as a subgrantee, as well as with the Colorado State Library's Office of Library Research Service, which specializes in researching different aspects of library service with a real focus on libraries and incarceration. In addition to reaching out and building more formal networks with our subgrantees and partners, we're going to expand our own capacity in-house. So this is something that's a little bit new for SFPL to accept a grant of this size, and we're really fortunate to have Maureen's support and all of the support in finance. It's been a large undertaking that we're very excited about. Part of the expansion that we'll do is actually create a new position to help administer the funds to make sure that we're able to be a reliable partner to our subgrantees and to execute all of the different activities that we'll be undertaking during this grant. We're also going to bring in a GIS analyst who is going to support us in our research role. We're going to be looking at some national level trends and models, so that role is going to be really important, as well as to help us visualize some of our findings. And we're going to be bringing in another 3630 librarian in jail and reentry services in order to make sure that our ongoing work is supported, as well as to build out some of our research capacity. Next slide, please. As you may remember from a previous presentation that Jail and Reentry Services gave to the Library Commission, there's a huge need for this type of service. And when we began designing our program now almost 4 years ago, we discovered that it was very difficult to find information about library services and different models for doing this work. So we pulled from several models that we were able to identify, including in California and largely from New York Public Library. And in the span of years that we've been an operating program, we have really become a model for doing this work. And San Francisco Public Library is known now for our library services. What we know is that from our own experience that we really need more models that can be modified to fit the different environments that librarians find themselves working in. We also know that there's this sudden influx in the field of interest in doing this type of work. Not only do we regularly have many, many qualified intern applicants, but we receive a lot of questions and invitations to speak from various library programs. We need this to come not only from the grassroots, from librarians who are doing this work or community groups, but we also need it to come from administrations such as Michael. We're so fortunate to have your support for our work, as well as from associations like the American Library Association. So we're really hoping not only to support librarians who do this work, but directly to support incarcerated people in accessing more information, as well as their own support networks. Next slide, please. As I said, we'll be looking at some of the existing services for people who are incarcerated, but we want to take that information and make it visually useful, not only for librarians who are interested in starting their own programs or exploring other models, but also for the families and support networks of incarcerated people. And to that end, we're going to work with ALA to create an interactive map that shows different types of library services across the country, including jail library services, prison library services, as well as the work of community groups like Books to Prisoners groups that can be searched by type of library service or by area, so that if people are looking for information to support the people that they care about who are inside, they're able to find out what's locally available. We're also going to support librarians coming into this work and librarians who are already in this work by creating a virtual training series that will be hosted alongside the map that will be asynchronous and will cover a variety of topics of interest to librarians who are working with people who are incarcerated. That will be a yearly series that rolls out once a month, and ALA, as part of the grant, will provide up to 30 people for each training continuing education credits, so it will count towards their professional development. We are very excited to work with an advisory committee of community groups that frequently communicate with people who are currently incarcerated to guide our work and make sure that we're doing things that are meaningful, not only to librarians, but to people who are directly and negatively impacted by incarceration. We're going to support ALA in providing a new set of standards for library services for people who are incarcerated. The last set of standards was published in 1992, and in that period, there's been a bit of a lag of association level support. With the new executive director, Tracy D. Hall of ALA, there's a really renewed interest in making sure that the kinds of infrastructure that librarians need are available. We're also going to support ALA in developing some digital literacy programming that's focused on reentry. When people have been incarcerated, even for just a short amount of time, there are huge technological leaps that occur. And when people are released, there's a lot of concern that people do not have digital familiarity or digital literacy that's needed to do basic tasks like apply for a job. Next slide. So this is just to show some of our roles. SFPL is going to be responsible for providing a professional network and platform among librarians who are already doing this work, and a site where people who are interested in doing this work can reach out and join our network. We're going to be working on the interactive map that I mentioned, as well as developing the trainings in-house. ALA will work on standards development, digital literacy programming, as well as hosting our Born Digital content so that it's publicly available. And the Colorado State Library Research Service is going to help us to locate services, as well as to visualize our data and findings so that we can create meaningful reports and publications. Next slide. This is a breakdown of the personnel and commitments that will be happening here at SFPL, as well as with our subgrantees. I'll just pause here for a moment. Next slide. And this is a breakdown of our budget by year. So our first year here at SFPL is going to be full of activity. Not only will we be hiring the new positions, but we will also be supporting librarians to travel to the American Library Association conference in June of 2022 for a half-day convening of jail and prison librarians and juvenile detention center librarians. And we'll be providing them some financial support for that convening. And the ALA is also going to hold a public hearing on the developing new version of the library standards for library services related to incarceration at the June 2022 conference. So both of us are front-ending our spending in the first year of work. And the second year is really going to be focused on continuing the training series, as well as launching the digital literacy prototype sites and analyzing our findings over the course of the 2 years. Next slide. We know from our work inside of the jails that this project will have a major impact. We hear from our patrons inside all of the time how much it means to have access to information and to have access to the library. And often when we enter a pod in the jails, we hear the word library make its way cell to cell to cell as the excitement builds that we've come in. We know too that many prison librarians feel isolated in their work, due somewhat to the nature of the work, but also just the fact that people who enter facilities are not allowed to have access to technology either for the most part. So we know that there needs to be a better support network and professional network among librarians who are doing this work, especially as a way to invite new librarians into the work. We know that library services can be improved for people who are incarcerated, and really look forward to doing that and showing various models of doing this work and data-driven reports that help to provide a real example of the impact, not only of our research, but of the kinds of programs that already exist or are developing. And I should mention here that ALA 2020 will be held in Washington, DC. With hope that there might be some people who attend who have the ability to direct legislation in the future. Next slide. So right now we're very early in this process. We have submitted legislation to the Board of Supervisors. We are hoping to go to the Budget and Finance Committee as soon as possible, which we're working on, and hope to have the mayor's approval by late February, early March of this year, which is when we'll begin hiring. We're very fortunate to have the mayor's support. If you haven't seen it already, the mayor's office issued a statement on this grant, and we're so glad that she is behind it. Next slide. I am happy to answer any questions related to that brief overview.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. And thank you, Jeannie and Rachel, for stepping up to lead this initiative. I also want to acknowledge the Community Programs and Partnerships Division and the Finance Division, as you mentioned, for supporting this effort. You know, I firmly believe this work will demonstrate the transformational power of reading, learning, and literacy for incarcerated people. So I look forward to seeing the outcome. And you know, this really is life-saving, humanizing work, and we're very proud to support you on this. All right, commissioners, finally, our next presenter is Kathy Del Neo, our Chief of Branches, and she has an update on our reopening efforts. This is a bittersweet moment. I would be remiss if I didn't also highlight that this report will be Kathy's last presentation before the San Francisco Public Library Commission, before she assumes the prestigious post as state librarian for her home state of Vermont. Kathy has received a gubernatorial nomination to be the next state librarian, and she has been a wonderful, strong contributor as a branch manager and a library administrator as part of our executive leadership team during her tenure with SFPL. So on behalf of our team, Kathy, congratulations on your appointment. Take it away, Chief.
I wasn't prepared for that ahead of my presentation. I'm feeling all choked up right now. So I just want to thank everyone for the opportunities I've had here in San Francisco and for this chance today to share one last branch library reopening update. All right. So next slide, please. On this slide, we've listed all of the SFPL branches that now provide service every day of the week, including evening hours. This list has been added to since you saw it last month, because on January 8th, we expanded to 7-day service at Bayview, Chinatown, Potrero, Presidio, and Sunset branches. That same day, we also extended our closing time at 7 other branches from 5:30 to 6 o'clock p.m. Those branches will be providing 5-day-a-week service for a little while longer while we staff up. With these increases in service hours, our branch libraries have actually restored 91% of our pre-pandemic open hours. Next slide, please. Our team in the branch division continues to work closely with our colleagues in Library Human Resources to fill vacant positions in the division so that we can fully restore 7-day service to all communities in San Francisco. We anticipate that we will have sufficient staffing to launch the next wave of branches after we complete the recruitment of another wave of librarians and branch managers a little bit later this year. We look forward to again being able to say that every one of San Francisco's branch libraries is open every day of the week and to resuming full service to the community later this fiscal year. We anticipate we'll be able to do that in the spring. I want to just take an opportunity to thank all of the branch managers and circulation supervisors who have been working hard to onboard and train the new staff at their locations. I also want to thank the team of circulation trainers and the staff from other departments who have been providing trainings to support branch staff in learning the skills they need to deliver excellent service to our library patrons in San Francisco. I want to extend an enormous thank you to my team in the Chief of Branch's office, who have worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic and reopening efforts. I'm deeply appreciative of the work they do supporting branch division staff who provide excellent library service every day. All of us in the branch division appreciate your continued patience and support as we enter this final push to restore branch library services. I'll be here to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you again for your service to the City and County of San Francisco. Commissioners, that concludes the City Librarian's report.
Thank you very much, Chief Librarian. And now we will move into our public comment before our commission discussion on this item number 5, the City Librarian's report. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment should now raise their hand to be added to the queue. If you are using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you've called in to the Webex dial-in number at 1-415-655-0001, please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there is currently a commenter in the queue.
Would you please ask the commenter to comment?
Dr. Carolyn Scott, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dr. Carolyn Ransom Scott. I'm a native of San Francisco, raised, born here, and I am here to speak a little bit about More Than a Month celebration. I'm excited to be here, and I want to welcome Connie Wolf, President, and thank Mary Wardell as well. Welcome aboard, Connie. And Mary, thank you for your services. But regarding More Than a Month, congratulations for the marvelous list of Black History Month, the events that promote healing and well-being as we continue to fight through this pandemic. and certainly healing and well-being is needed. I'm especially excited to see the announcement for the new Black Excellence, Black Inventors bookmark, which I myself created and helped to upgrade and change and design, but not without the village, not without the help of Michael Lambert, not without the help of Shauna Sherman and the team from HRC. I cannot thank you enough. I'm humbled for the 6th series of bookmarks that will be placed in every library in the city. I'm excited for San Francisco. I'm excited because this is historical. There's no other city, no other state doing what you are doing. I'm excited for the minds that will learn more and unite and come together and get rid of so many things that are not needed, the discrimination, the division, and all of the dark things that take away from the joy of knowing this great city. I'm excited because it's going to usher in an opportunity to fairness, justice, and to correct the record and tell the truth, to promote learning about contributions from Black African Americans to the culture and the economy of this country. I'm excited because Black people were inventors in the past. They are inventing now and will invent for the future. We are excited to hear the stories of Black inventors who follow the legacies of the great minds of Lewis Latimer, who invented the light bulb and technology, and for the mathematicians called the human computers known as hidden figures, who helped in the space race to put the first man on the moon. I'm excited about our late Eric Williams, son of Ruth Williams of our Memorial Opera House, who invented the stent technology, which eliminates the month-long term of being in the hospital for heart surgery, bypass. Now with that stent, you come home the next day walking out the door. I am excited for what this library is ushering in for the nation to see and hear more about the school system, our children's minds. I'm excited for cultures that will walk together. As Dr. King said, one day, that dream about us walking hand in hand without looking at a color, but black, white, yellow, together, brown, we're all together from the same garden. There are no weeds. I'm excited, Mary. I'm excited, Michael. I'm excited, Shauna, because this shows us that all people have the potential to create. The library, too, is the place that sparks and ushers in dreams, ingenuity, and future inventors to our city. So I appeal to you to continue to reach out to the communities that were neglected and allow this to continue to move forward for the security of this city and the nation. Thank you so much, commissioners. Thank you so much, library. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you, Dr. Scott, for those inspiring and very meaningful words. Are there any other commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter in the queue at this time.
You can proceed. Thank you.
Caller 7, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the reports. And I certainly am glad for all of the positives that we're talking about. Maybe I should start with the congratulations and or departures. I guess it's congratulations for Kathy Del Neo, but it is cold in Vermont, at least in the winter. And of course, congratulations for the election of the president and vice president of the Library Commission. With respect to the more than a month Black History and Culture programs, I was very glad to hear about all of them. Thank you very much. I'm not sure that I heard very much about Black history, Black politics, and so I would hope perhaps we could hear more about that subsequent to these comments. I'm assuming and sure that there is a lot that hasn't been mentioned, of course. Can't mention everything, but would be very interested to hear more on those lines. With respect to the incarceration project, I know that the library has had quite some experience with jails and so on, but I'm not clear what the Mellon Foundation is doing with respect to what does it expect, what is its goal, or what are its goals. And I have to say that whenever an outside agency that's not a library, I'm fine with the library or libraries in general or library organizations taking steps, but I'm not sure what the expectations are of the foundation. And I do have some concerns with previous sponsorship by outside folks with their own agendas. Finally, with respect to the library reopenings, of course, we're always glad that there's progress being made. When we say full service, there are a lot of problems. Books not coming in very promptly, magazines not available promptly, abbreviated hours in the evening. 91% is great, but when all that's cut systematically is evening hours that people have said they want the most, that's not so great. So I hope we can get truly full service, and I'd like to know what the goals are with respect to those goals at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield, for your comments. Are there any more requests for comments in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time. I'll pause and allow additional commenters to join if they so choose. Madam President, there are still no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. So hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed on this item, and we will now move to commission discussion on this item number 5. We've just heard 3 extraordinary reports from some superstars at the San Francisco Public Library. So appreciative of your extraordinary efforts and contributions, just overwhelmingly positive and so inspiring. If there are any commissioners who would like to make comment or ask questions of the teams, please raise your hand. I see Commissioner Wardell Garaducci. Would you like to comment?
Very quickly, I'm just going to add to what has already been said. Shauna, thank you so much just for everything that you do. Just a remarkable program. You and the team just continue to blow me away personally. And I also want to just acknowledge Jeannie Austin. Jeannie, what you and your team are doing to create the professional standards, when I heard you say that, that is such significant developmental work. It's the ways in which this particular area providing access and library services to persons who are incarcerated, how you create that as a field in and of itself within not only library services and the work that you're doing with ALA and the foundation that did the seed funding, but this is how you actually open up contemporary librarianship in a 21st century context. when you start to think about what is the role of the American library, even in that case, the North American Library, in a public context on issues that matter. I just want to acknowledge that the work that you're doing is extraordinary, not just for San Francisco, but it's really extraordinary to be at the forefront of founding with the others a new area. And I just want to say that did not fall short on me. I know what it means because diversity work in higher education is only from a field, it's only maybe 20 years old. So to be able to create a new profession, even within a profession, if you want to call it that, is a big deal. And it actually is a lot of responsibility because there's a lot of ethical and other pieces that you carry on your shoulders to try to do it and lead it right. I know it's not just you alone, but I just want to say thank you so much. Nothing that you're doing is falling short on me as being quite remarkable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Ono, would you like to make some comments or ask questions?
I just wanted to make some comments. I would like to thank all three presenters, Shauna, Jeannie, and Kathy. As I mentioned earlier, San Francisco is always number one, and these presentations, again, point out how we're trend setting and we're setting the standards for across the nation. Getting a Mellon grant, having the bookmarks available for the first time. I appreciate Dr. Scott letting us know that this is the first time that across the nation that this has been done. I also want to thank Dr. Scott for your enthusiasm and your great comments. And we also received some written comments regarding the bookmarks. So I just also wanted to point that out if no one has seen them on the website. But what we're doing with the incarcerated in San Francisco is just amazing. And Kathy, I appreciate everything that you have done for SFPL, and I wish you luck in Vermont. They're very lucky to have you. And again, keep SFPL, keep doing what you guys are doing because we're number one and we're going to stay number one. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ono. Commissioner Lopez.
Yes, I think Commissioner Ono pretty much said what I wanted to say, but thank you for everything. The reports were very thorough. I'm very excited. And yes, Dr. Scott, you got me really excited as well. Thank you for your comments. I just want to say I really like the partnerships and the collaboration. It is very important, like the more than a month, the programming with the MOAD and all these other organizations. It is crucial because this type of work cannot be done alone. So definitely, I'm thrilled to see the collaboration and the partnership and all the hard work that you have done to put the program together. With the grant, well, I was reading and I was bragging about it, and I have to say that I feel that the work that you are doing with a population that is often ignored and marginalized and stigmatized, it's just tremendous. This is important. I think you're breaking the stereotypes that oftentimes people that have been incarcerated are just not good for anything else but committing crimes, which is not the case. And just the fact that they do, like every human being, we have rights, and we want opportunities to grow, to learn, to have access. So congratulations. I know that there's a lot of work ahead of you, and you have our support. I speak from I think I speak for myself, but for all the commissioners. And I just want to say, so proud to be part of this organization of of the commission, because you do the work and you make us look good, but the heart, the passion, the work is there and is demonstrated. And then Kathy, congratulations. I know this past year during the pandemic has been really, really challenging for all of us, and for you with having so many staff deploy as disaster workers and still providing services. You've done a tremendous job. I wish you the best. And thank you. It was a great librarian's report. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez. Are there any other commissioners who would like to? I don't see any hands up. If not, I would just like to conclude this session by thanking Chief Librarian Lambert for his extraordinary leadership. And once again, just adding to the chorus to Jeannie and Shauna and Kathy, extraordinary work, and especially moving ahead, Shauna and Jeannie. Ideas can be cheap, but it's really the staff that makes the library what it is, and your dedication and passion and commitment is really quite extraordinary. So we thank you for coming up with these amazing projects and ideas and making them models for other libraries around the country to follow, and to know that it's possible to make change and to add to a community. So thank you. And on behalf of the whole commission, Kathy, we thank you for your service, and we wish you well in cold Vermont. And we welcome you back anytime, and thank you again. We will now move to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the approval of minutes from December 16th, 2021. This is an action item. And we will now move into our public comment before our commission discussion on this item number 6. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment should now raise their hand to be added to the queue. If you're using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into Webex, dial in number at 1-415-655-0001. Please press *3 to line up to speak. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no commenters in the queue. Madam President, a commenter has just joined the queue.
Wonderful. Please begin allowing public comment on this item.
Caller number 7, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening again. It's Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. I want to start out with the last item on, or the next, the approval of the minutes section of the draft minutes. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a really quite shocking, intentional censoring of very strong comments that I was making with regard to something that I think is very important and which I spoke very sharply and clearly about previously. The library has, over a long time, touted with no particular purpose that's apparent, in other words, not in answer to a research question, but just simply, for example, at the library, where you have multiple boxes of Get Social, and then you have Facebook and some of the other larger folks that you're basically encouraging people to go to. Facebook, as I have said, has clearly things that people like that are good, but there are also things that make Facebook dangerous and toxic. In particular, I had commented already back in October with regard to Frances Haugen, I think she pronounces it, her Senate testimony in which she basically said profits over safety, especially the safety of children is what Facebook stands for, and that's been their guiding principle. And that's why the library, among other reasons, shouldn't be touting safe Facebook and these other folks basically as free advertising. And you've consistently left out anything at all that I've said about Facebook's toxicity, Facebook's bad effects, and so on. I'm glad to say that there's actually an Atlantic Monthly story in the issue from November of 2021. It's called Facebook Land by Adrienne LaFrance. The social giant isn't just acting like an authoritarian power, it is one. And it basically says that it's tearing apart democracy. And one of the things it says, American citizens and those of other democracies might shun Facebook and Instagram not merely as a lifestyle choice, but as a matter of civic duty.
3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Warfield, for your comments. Operations, is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no additional commenters in the queue. I'll pause a moment to allow any additional commenters to join if they so choose. Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. Hearing no further requests for comments, public comment is now closed on item number 6. We will now move to the commission discussion and action item on this item for approval of minutes from December 16th, 2021. Are there any comments from the commissioners at this time? If not, then I would like to call for a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as they are.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. So Commissioner Wardell Garaducci has set the motion in place and Commissioner Lopez has seconded. I will now do a roll call of the remaining commissioners who should vote either aye or no. Please say aye or no when I call your name. Vice President Huang.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall. Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to item number 7, adjournment. And again, this is an action item. And I now open this up for public comment. Before we have commission discussion on this item number 7. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment should now raise their hand to be added to the queue. If you are using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. If you have called into the Webex dial-in number at 1-415-655-0001, please press *3 to be added to the queue. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are 2 commenters in the queue.
Thank you. Please begin allowing public comment on this item.
Caller 7, your 3 minutes begins now.
Can you hear me? My line was unmuted and then muted, and I think it's unmuted.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and P.O. Box 170-544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. The reason, just so you know, why I give contact information is that in a regular meeting, in-person meeting, folks generally, it's one of the things that's a nice thing about and an important thing about a public meeting is that pretty much everybody can see everybody else. And if you're interested in something that somebody said, whether you want to discuss it with them, agree with them, disagree with them, suggest something, go for a cup of coffee, you can just walk up to them and then make whatever arrangements are mutually agreeable. That's simply not possible on these remote meetings, especially when you're on the phone and can't even see the folks. And that's why I think it's important, if a person wants to provide contact information, for you to note those in the minutes, just as they have given the information. And if that's what they think is important, to not censor it out systematically. With respect to the adjournment, I've said this before and I'll say it again, and for the new commissioner, a bit of history. I've been going to Library Commission meetings when they had, at or near the end of every meeting, a section that enabled each of the commissioners to say what they would like to see on future agendas, whether that was something that came up during the meeting or whether that was something that came up through their reading or their perambulations, if you like. This was their opportunity to represent the public and to say, I'd like to have on the agenda or on the next agenda or whatever and so on, as your piece of participation in the process of governing and setting policy for the library. And that was ended some years back, unfortunately, and I have said that this commission should not end its meeting until you have insisted, or at least spoken up, to say that that is something you would like to reinstate. It's also something that many, many other bodies routinely have, so that they can request things to be put on future agendas, especially when issues have come up. Today we had some very good questions from the commissioners themselves. Thank you very much.
Mr. Warfield, for your comments. Operations, are there any additional commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter in the queue.
Please begin allowing public comment.
Dr. Scott, your
Hi.
3 minutes begins now.
Thank you so much again, and I will be brief. I'm just amazed with this meeting, and it's my first, and I'm sorry, but it is, and well, I serve as a commissioner and clergy as well, so there's a lot going on, but this will not be my last. I will be bringing classrooms and children and friends and community, the marginalized. I worked jail and prison under Chuck Colson for about 30 years, juvenile jail, prison, and to see what you're doing and
Charles Colson, wasn't he one of the Nixon?
What?
Charles Colson.
Yes, I served as his chairperson for NARCAL here on the West Coast and worked back in DC and here. So I'm amazed with where you are, what you're doing, and how you're doing. We're not perfect, but I tell you what, you're shining. You are shining, and thank you for the opportunity. I also challenge you to make sure you get the series of the bookmarkers. I challenge you to come online and hear more about these contributors. I challenge you to hear, I've gotten Washington, D.C. involved with this, and the news journalists, and Fifth Appeals Court retired judge, criminals court judge from Philadelphia, and the nephew of one of the women with Hidden Figures, as well as Garrett Morgan's relative. We're looking for people all over to contribute to this time. We're so grateful for the opportunity, and we just want to see it grow even more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Your challenge is accepted. Operations, are there any additional callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional callers in the queue at this time. I'll pause for a moment to allow additional commenters to join the queue if they so choose. Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you, Operations. So hearing no further comment, no further request for comment on item number 7, public comment is now closed, and we will now move to the commission discussion and action on this item. Any comments from the commissioners, or do I hear, is there a move to a motion?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I second. This is true.
And so Commissioner Wardell Garaducci has placed the motion, and Commissioner Ono has seconded. I will now do a roll call, and you should say either yay or no as I call your name. Vice President Huang.
Aye.
Commissioner Bolander.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So the motion passes unanimously. And as we close out today's meeting, I just want to again thank Mary, Commissioner Wardell Garaducci, for her extraordinary leadership over the last 6 years, and so delighted that you are part of the commission to keep offering your perspectives. I'm honored to serve with Vice President Huang. Thank you for your contributions. And I do want to also call out and thank our former Commissioner, John Lee, for his years of service, dedication, and contributions. And we thank him and honor and respect his contributions, his service to this city and the community. Thank you again for fellow commissioners for your support in my leadership, and I very much look forward to partnering with you in the months ahead. Here's to a great start to 2022, and thank you to the Chief Librarian and the entire staff of the library for your contributions. Here's to a brighter 2022 ahead. Thank you, and the meeting is adjourned.